All right, thanks everybody for joining us for the May 3rd, 2021 City of Courtenay regular council meeting. I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging that the land that we are gathering and zooming on is the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. And that due to the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with Ministerial Order M192, 2020, and the class order mass gatherings, council meetings will be conducted virtually and live streamed on the City of Courtenay's YouTube channel. And with that, we will receive our minutes. If somebody could move receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Excellent. And are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, anybody opposed to receipt of minutes? Seeing none, they are received unanimously both for April 19th and 26th. And any introduction of late items, nobody said anything, so I'm thinking we are probably okay for now. And no delegation, so let's move right into staff reports. And we have zoning amendment bylaw number 3027.
Mayor, I'm happy to move that based on today's staff report entitled Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 3027 to allow for a secondary suite at 1814 Grieve Avenue. That council approve option 1 and proceed to first and second readings of zoning amendment bylaw number 3027/2021, and that council considers zoning amendment bylaw 3027/2021 consistent with the city's official community plan, and that council waives the requirement to hold a public hearing with respect to zoning amendment bylaw 3027/2021 pursuant to section 467 subsection 2 of the Local Government Act, and direct staff to give notice of the waiver of the public hearing pursuant to section 467 of the Local Government Act in advance of considerations of third reading of the bylaw.
Second.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Councillor Frisch and Councillor McCollum. That was a mouthful for sure. And I'll pass it over to staff. CAO Jeff Garbett.
Thanks, Mr. Fitzgerald. Will give you an overview.
Thank you. Through CAO to Mayor and Council. So this is a proposal to rezone an existing house to permit a secondary suite. The house was originally built in 1962 and the suite was added shortly after that. It has been occupied on and off over the years, but has not been occupied for the last several years. The applicant now would like to rezone the property to legalize the suite and add it as a permitted use at this address. The applicant has consulted with neighbors and received 5 verbal confirmations of support, and as well as 2 letters submitted in support of the application. Given the support and consistency with the official community plan, staff are recommending the public hearing is waived and that notice of the public hearing be waived as provided. With that, I'll take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to staff for the report. I appreciate that this is an option we have available to us to waive a public hearing, particularly under the circumstances as cited. Could you perhaps just explain the surrounding area and how much of that section of West Courtenay is not in fact already zoned to permit this? Because it's my understanding that there are actually very few neighborhoods in West Courtenay where a secondary suite would not be permitted by current zoning. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So this particular area of West Courtenay is largely R1 zoning. So that's including the existing zoning for the property. And so that zoning doesn't permit secondary suites. You kind of go to the outer edges of the neighborhood along Fitzgerald Avenue and along 17th Street, you start to hit R2. So that would allow for secondary suites or for duplexes. So I guess in summary, the immediate neighborhood, no, it's predominantly single residential uses, but as you move out into the rest of West Courtenay, the uses and the number of units permitted increases.
Thank you. So when this was active as a suite before, it was actually illegal. And this is in fact an opportunity for the owner to bring it into compliance. Would that be correct?
Thanks for the question. I would say the suite was likely built prior to zoning for suites. being in place. So what would have been in a state of what we call non-conforming for a period of time, but the owners provided that it's been not in operation for several years, meaning it loses any non-conforming rights it may have, and therefore would have to be rezoned to permit the suite to be reoccupied.
Thanks very much. It makes sense to me to support this.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Any opposed to the motion as presented? Seeing none.
Mayor, I think we should vote on this. It does seem significant enough.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
and we're going to be voting on it as a bylaw as well, probably later on. So, but if we want, we'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton,
I'm in favor.
Councillor Frisch,
I'm also in favor.
Councillor Hillian,
In favor.
Councillor McCollum,
In favor.
Councillor Moran,
In favor.
and Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
Excellent, and I'm in favor as well, so that's unanimous. Fantastic. All right. Next, we have the OCP Amendment 3018.
Through the chair, again, Mr. Fitzgerald will give an introduction.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Procedure, you're going to consider its introduction.
Well, we can talk about it and then move it. It's all good.
May we proceed?
Second.
So I'll pass it over to you, Mr. CAO, Jeff Garbett.
Mr. Fitzgerald, if you want to do the introduction.
Thank you. Through CAO to Mayor and Council. So this is a proposal to amend both the official community plan as well as the zoning bylaw to permit a new strata development. The strata development consists of 39 units in total, which contains a mix of triplexes, duplexes, and single detached units, as well as carriage houses on certain lots. The access to the development would be through a private strata road, which would extend off the end of Copperfield Road where it currently exists. Council will probably remember that this proposal was originally considered at the October 5th, 2020 meeting. The first reading was given at that time. Also at that time, a constraint or a development constraint was identified around insufficient water pressure issues in the area. And therefore the path chosen was to give it first reading, but the developer then to work with the city to come up with a way to solve the water pressure issues prior to the bylaw being considered further. Since then, the city working with the developer has come up with a solution, and now sufficient water pressure can be provided to the development. So at this time, staff are now recommending that council gives the bylaw second reading, and that a public hearing is scheduled. I'll take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Matt. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And thanks, Matt, for the report. I had a question about sort of the pedestrian accessibility and bicycle accessibility for this subdivision. There's obviously a lot going on in the way of densification here, but also a lot of land being natural habitat being preserved, which I think is really great, and obviously all the attention to the creek and riparian setbacks. But when it comes to transportation, I wonder if maybe there could be a better job of connecting this up to the regional trail network. And so my question sort of revolves around some access that looks like it comes off of Steel Crescent. I don't know if you're familiar with Steel Crescent, Matt, but it's kind of in the next subdivision over, and at either end of it, it does seem to have a parkland. And it does connect directly to Cumberland Road at Arden Road. So it seems like, somewhere where there's going to be really good access for those modes of transportation that I mentioned. And I'm wondering, what it would take to get that more direct route instead of sending people walking. I don't know the numbers looking at the subdivision, but I'm going to guess it's a few hundred extra meters to go across the river and then loop all the way back down to where you want to go. So I wonder if you have any thoughts about that possibility, or if that was contemplated. how people are actually going to get in and out without a car.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Through CAO to Mayor and Council. So you're right, the existing pedestrian network as proposed and shown is somewhat longer than it may have to be. That's certainly something that we could ask the developer to consider or provide additional information on, and if it was considered in any greater detail, and provide council with that clarity.
Yeah, you know, looking at the plan, I realized that they're using an existing trail to get over the creek, and that could be a substantial hurdle. I don't know what it would take to build a new pedestrian crossing in the area that I suggested, but I'd be interested in getting that information. I don't know how that fits into the process, if it holds things up, if it's a simple request, and if it needs a motion or not.
Yeah, thanks for the question. If I could maybe turn that one over to Ian, just on how he'd want to see the procedure for a change like that.
Yeah, thanks very much. So the location of the existing crossing was part of the adjacent development on the other side of the creek. It was a requirement of that developer to install it, with the long-term intent of providing that pedestrian connection, and ultimately, if lands within the regional district develop, connecting up to Arden Elementary. So relocating it to a different location, I wouldn't suggest at this time. Certainly, if it's council's desire, we can work with the applicant to look at that, but it would need ministry approvals to create a new crossing on the creek. And then I will point out as well that in addition to that trail network, applicants do still have the option of coming out Copperfield Road to Arden, whether they're cycling or walking, just lacking cycling infrastructure on Copperfield, as well as sidewalks along Copperfield Road today.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I understand there might be some complications, but in the long haul, it makes a big difference to cut a few hundred people, a few hundred meters out of people's walks. So I'll leave that for the rest of council to chew on if there's any interest. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And next is Councillor Theos.
Why, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I recall this coming in front of us last time, and I do recall that there was a few other concerns above and beyond the one that Councillor Frisch brought up. But the other concerns were in regards to the from the public, that was in regards to the project not fitting into the neighborhood and not being complementary to the neighborhood. And I think the other one was mainly in regards to intensifying of the traffic that's going to be coming along that area, and that there was concerns in that regard. And I wanted to direct my question towards the water pressure. Now, you know, we were talking about the water main last time, in which was highlighted by Matt's report, and the alternative plan seems to be the sustaining valve. Now, I wanted to ask in regards to the cost that this will have, and who would be paying for that cost. And secondly, if I can get an answer in regards to, is this going to possibly compromise the water pressure for the remaining residents in the area? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So you're right. The original proposal was to run the water line down the other direction on Arden, and now it's being diverted over to Cumberland. As proposed, this would be entirely the responsibility and cost of the developer. So the cost would be entirely built into part of the development. As far as water pressures and hooking the two systems together, the water model has been run on this, and it has been reviewed by Public Works and Development Engineering staff, and no concern like that has been brought up. I would say it's not an issue.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Councillor Theos. And next we have Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I was just curious about sidewalks in that area. I was going to take a look at the master plans to see if there was anything long-term, because I did have an inquiry about sidewalks along Arden, sort of at the Cumberland end there. Are you able to tell me what might be proposed for that area in the, I wouldn't think it's short-term, but longer term?
Thanks for the question. So along Arden, I'm not aware of any improvements being proposed in the near future. It isn't a collector or arterial standard, so it would have a sidewalk if it was updated or if development were to occur. It's good, but at this time, no improvements or sidewalks. I don't know of any improvements or sidewalks being added.
Yeah, it has come up, particularly at that end of Arden Road, just because it is getting quite a bit more congested and a lot more pedestrian traffic, and the trails that are there. So, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. Next we have Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to staff for the report. I just wanted to note that our primary decision tonight is whether to move this forward to a public hearing, and I'm certainly in support of that. I do recall, as has been noted, that there was significant opposition from the existing residents of Copperfield Road, who identified challenges that they felt the change would bring. I think it's important for those and other residents to have their opportunity to come forward, and also for the proponent to put their pitch forward as well. And happy to support that process. And oftentimes when we have public hearings, whether the council decides to approve the proposal or not, there are often useful changes and aspects of a project that can be highlighted through the process itself. So I think we should encourage that part of our regular process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hillian. Appreciate that. I did see some other, oh, there we go. Oh, sorry, we're fighting hands there, Councillor Hillian, but I saw some other hands up there, but I think they're all gone now. Any further questions or comments? This was just receipt, so I'll dispense and just say unanimous receipt unless somebody's opposed.
No, it's not receipt, Mayor. It's a motion on the floor. Oh, sorry. There is a receipt motion, then another motion to follow. My apologies.
Yep, it's all good. We're all trying. It's good teamwork. So I'll dispense of the receipt as unanimously received. If somebody could move the main motion.
I can move this one, Mayor. I'll move that based on the October 5th, 2020, make sure I'm reading it right. Sorry, I scrolled down to the previous report, so I'll let someone else who has it readily at hand. Now I've got it. Okay. Based on the May 3rd, 2021 staff report, updated proposal, official community plan amendment, bylaw number 3018, and zoning amendment, bylaw number 2912, Lot A, Copperfield Road. Council approve option 1 and complete the following steps. 1, the council gives second reading to official community plan amendment, bylaw number 3018, to redesignate the subject property from suburban residential to urban residential. 2, the council gives second reading of zoning amendment bylaw number 2912 to create a new CD30 zone and rezone the property legally described as Lot A, District Lot 138, Comox District Plan 20607, except parts in plans 312R, 14210, and 29833 from R1A to CD30 and PA2, and 3, the council directs staff to schedule and advertise a statutory public hearing with respect to the above referenced bylaws.
Second.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Councillor McCollum. And we have had a bit of a fulsome discussion. Any further questions or comments before we poll for vote? Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I just wanted to say in general, I think this is an excellent development, and I'm actually quite impressed with how much work they've gone to conform to the local area plan of the Arden Corridor. But I did want to highlight that I think, pedestrian access is really important, especially in a subdivision. I guess it's kind of a subdivision, kind of not, especially in a development like this, where it's actually quite a long ways to take the various roads and routes. And so any little bit that can be saved, it would be really interesting to find out what it would take to get that bridge put into that more direct spot for, if someone lives at the bottom of the development and they have to walk halfway up the development to get out and walk back down it, the psyche is that it's kind of a big waste of time. But so I just wanted to put in my 2 cents on that. Thanks very much.
All right, thanks, Councillor Frisch. And seeing no further questions or comments, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Frisch,
In favor.
Councillor Hillian,
In favor.
Councillor McCollum,
In favor.
Councillor Moran,
In favor.
Councillor Theos,
In favor.
and I'm in favor as well. That's unanimous. And next we have the local government development approvals funding program funding application.
Mayor, I'll move that based on the May 3rd, 2021 staff report entitled Local Government Development Approvals Program Funding Application, Council approve option 1 as follows. 1, that council support an application to the Local Government Development Approvals Program based on the general projects outlined in this report. And 2, that council authorize staff to submit the application package to the UBCM and support staff providing overall grant management if successful.
Second that.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Councillor Frisch. And I'll pass this over to staff, CAO Jeff Garbett.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have been having some discussions with councillors on the importance of identifying grant opportunities, and Mr. Buck is going to introduce this. I just want to start by saying that we are going to do our very best to identify funding opportunities to help support our strategic initiatives. And this was a really important analysis that the province did province-wide on trying to support the development application process. So I'm really happy that staff are bringing this forward for council's endorsement. Mr. Buck?
Thanks very much. Just adding to what the CAO has said, the projects that are outlined here, they're very high level at this point, but are things that staff have been looking at over the course of probably the last 12 months. So the timing of this grant opportunity is ideal. What it will really do is take a lot of burden off staff and allow us to proceed with these projects quicker than we otherwise might be able to. Having said that, we expect quite a bit of competition for this grant funding. Hoping that we're still successful in the first round. There is some indication there'll be future rounds of funding as well. But overall, the city does a pretty good job at processing development applications, in particular where there's a motivated and experienced developer on the other side of the counter, as we say. Ones who, when we ask for information, are really pressuring their consultants to respond quickly. And good examples of that are the recent major apartment projects that, for the most part, have been approved in about a year time frame. Sort of the 12 to 14 month time frame is what we're typically seeing. Having said that, there's always room for improvement, and especially with the new official community plan, hopefully rolling out later this year. We'll end up with a bunch of new guidelines that it'll take time to educate the community on and get people up to speed with. So one of the big components is developing guidebooks to new development permit guidelines and OCP processes. So rather than having to read what are typically lengthy documents, allowing the development industry to focus right in on the core areas that we typically look for in development approvals. That's something that was identified in the study Mr. Garbett outlined, is adding transparency to the approval process. So typically that's following existing policies and in this case, the official community plan. Tied to that, we will also hopefully by this time next year, maybe a little bit later, have a refreshed zoning bylaw to work with. And we're additionally looking at guidebooks and new application forms related to all types of applications. So that work would extend into 2022, which also works with the grant funding. On the engineering side is typically where I think most municipalities face the biggest criticism. Engineering review is often detailed, takes a lot of time, and adds a lot of expense to development applications, not only because of that review and their consulting time, but that's where the large expense usually comes in terms of offsite improvements. Working with the development industry over the last year, well, probably last 2 years, because the last year we've had our meetings canceled by COVID. We've talked about a way to allow applicants to apply for engineering approvals earlier in the process. Typically what would happen is they go through the council processes, development process, and get to a building permit. And that's when we start looking at the detailed engineering. So building permits on these complex projects are at times being held up. So the idea here is to develop a new process that would allow applicants at any stage earlier in that development continuum to apply for their engineering approval, recognizing there is some risk if things change, but the bigger players in the industry really like that idea. Talking to developers from outside the community, they like this idea. So we'll allocate some funding towards looking at fee structures, application forms, and pulling that together, hopefully by the end of this year if we're successful in funding. In addition to that, one of the things we're contemplating, not outlined in this report, is a review of terms of reference for different studies that we ask for, and in particular traffic impact studies. When they're triggered, what's required, and what our expectations are to, again, allow consistency in that process. And then on the building permit side, it's a relatively small ask. We do an excellent job on the processing of building permits and managed to transition very quickly to an electronic format last year when the pandemic hit. But in order to enhance the service that we're offering today, more on the in-house side is looking at new software that allows the building inspectors to digitally mark up the plans that are coming in. So it's a PDF editing software. We've already budgeted in the 2021 budget for larger display monitors. Becomes difficult for staff on regular 24-inch monitors to look at complete plans. And then also budgeted as part of the city funding for this is for new laptops or tablets. They're still analyzing the more robust systems. So in the field, they can review plans with applicants on site in a little bit better way than on a tiny little cell phone or rolling out large plans. So it's really the move to a paperless system that the building department's looking at. And then finally, scanning of existing files is something that we're going to propose. And it's estimated we have about 30 to 40,000 paper records. And if we can obtain funding to get that information scanned, it just makes the review process, in particular on renovations of existing buildings, a lot quicker, where they can easily pull up the digital plans. That's the main categories that we're looking at. We're still just refining budgets and thinking up other minor ideas before we submit the application late this week, and happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And I just have to comment, just how fulsome and articulated and ambitious this seems. And I just really want to thank staff. I think those industry meetings that were started a couple of years ago really were successful. And the feedback I get, even within the pandemic, I think that really started to build some goodwill with some folks that maybe were feeling frustrated. And I just see this as just yet another, many ways that we're going to further improve that. So I just want to thank staff for doing such a great job. With that, I'll pass it over to Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what the mayor said, and I really enjoyed the OCP development workshop that I attended. It was great to hear from all the stakeholders around our processes, and I know some of them weren't always positive, but I think it's good to point out that in general our processes are really, as you know, our planning department is working really hard to make those as streamlined and quick as possible. I wondered if Mr. Buck, if you had any comparables to other communities on what their how long it takes similar developments to get through the system. You said 12 to 14 months. I'm thinking that that's probably within the ballpark of many other communities like ours, perhaps even quicker. Do you have any information on that, or?
Thanks for the question. No direct comparisons at this point, but I would say that for a community of our size and with our staffing resources, we're at the better end. There, as I say, always room for improvement, and there are some applications for various reasons. That time does get extended quite substantially, but compared to lower mainland municipalities, we do quite well. Obviously, don't see that same volume of applications, but don't have the same number of staff. So that's one of the fears, is that maybe the first round of funding will go to the bigger lower mainland municipalities where significantly higher growth rates and wait times. But like every other small municipality, and I've kind of been cruising what people are asking for, everybody's looking for this funding. So we're still hopeful.
Well, I won't exaggerate how well we're doing then. I don't want to jeopardize the funding. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Morin. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I think, Mayor, I know you already thanked staff, but I just wanted to repeat how awesome it is to see this coming forward. I know it's been something that we've been talking about for a long time, and there's probably a lot of processes that you guys have already changed, but a lot of the ideas you brought forward, I think, are what is needed and very progressive. I think the idea of having those more information for people is just excellent. So thanks for doing that. And look, hopefully we get the funding.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you. Finally unmuted. There we go. Thanks very much. And thank you so much for this report, Ian. This was just a really comprehensive overview that you laid out for this grant. And I was going to echo what our CAO was saying. I think a renewed emphasis on looking for grant possibilities where they lie. It just allows us to do more with less. And this seems like this is an opportunity for almost like a generational step forward for the way that that department operates. Things like digitization are going to make things, going to be a tremendous improvement. And so I'm overwhelmingly in favor of applying for this grant. And just had a small question about the developers breakfast. I noted they were canceled because of COVID. And I'm wondering if there might be, given that we still don't know how long that's all going to be around and changing the way we interact, I'm wondering if there's any possibility of reviving them. Perhaps the city of Courtenay might be able to, rather than buying people breakfast directly, might be able to, cover takeout from local restaurants. So you can still gather around for breakfast, but in different places, but try to get that interaction going. So I imagine what we spend on bacon and eggs is more than recouped in terms of just smoothing out communications and people just getting to know each other better. Is there any possibility of reviving that during COVID, doing some sort of Zoom breakfast?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's an excellent comment and something I've thought a little bit about. We haven't had too much pressure from industry to revive it at this point, I think, given how busy everybody is. But and we do meet quite often just on a one-on-one or small forum basis. But I think it is going to be important if we don't get out of the pandemic following the OCP adoption and then moving into the zoning, where there will be a lot of changes that we need to sit down and discuss. The idea of the breakfast meetings has been more focused on the subdivision side and the technical aspects of engineering. So involving public works in those discussions has been a big factor as well. But absolutely take your point very well, and something we'll reach out to industry and discuss over the coming month here or two if we get the funding.
Great, thanks, Ian.
Fantastic. Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. And again, just to reiterate to staff, I know weirdly we've actually gotten busier. I think, Ian, you've gotten busier during the pandemic, and so to again be ambitious and look at how can we do things better a year or two down the road and chasing these grants, I think is fantastic. And really, we're going to support you. And if there's anything else that we can do to support you, please let us know. We're really keen to make sure that this is a big success. And Jeff, I know I don't know if you wanted to add to that, but I know you've talked about how council working with staff, and especially on some of these grants, that that we really try to make sure that we're rowing in the same direction. And so I again really appreciate this report today, so that when we're talking to our counterparts at the provincial level, we can nudge them in particular directions, and same with UBCM. So thanks again. And with that, maybe I'll poll council for a vote, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
I am in favor.
Excellent. All right. So that is funding application. Next, we've got the UBCM provincial response to the 2020 resolutions.
Move receipt.
Second.
Excellent. And with that, I can pass it over to staff. CAO Jeff Garbett.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. So we've been advised that various responses are going to be coming out from the province at this point. So stay tuned on these correspondence that continues to arrive. Did council have any questions related to the correspondence under receipt?
Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I do note that this appears to be a new procedure, and it's welcome. Oftentimes on resolutions, we don't hear anything, and we don't actually know whether anything happened or not for quite some time. In this case, I think it's a reasonable response. It indicates that the province is aware that much as what they're doing good work, that there's always the opportunity to improve. I note they don't address the staff salary issue, which is directly a factor in retention, particularly in this sort of difficult work. But I'm satisfied with the extent that the response has come forward, and I think it's a conversation that we will continue to have with the province and BC Housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, and I think it's probably worth noting. Whenever I've spoken with our counterparts at BC Housing, they do look at Courtney as a really true partner, not just in housing, but also with innovative things like the warming center and stuff, which I know Councillor Hillian, you and the rest of council really wanted to support that. So I think that partnership that they have, and they know that there's that willingness, that goes a long way. So with that, it's just receipt. Anybody opposed to receipt? Seeing none, that is unanimously received. And next we have PACE.
Receipt.
Second.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And Mr. CAO Jeff Garbett.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, we'll continue to be involved. I had a discussion with Mr. Buck. Our development services staff are well in tuned and up on these activities. We're hopeful that they continue to look at options along the lines of the PACE program. It's really interesting that it is a very significant potential economic development tool when you look at the spinoffs that come through these types of improvements. And it's something that the communities in northern BC have really focused on energy efficiency through other sources of revenue. So we really applaud any innovations that we can do on this, and we'll certainly keep council informed as we move forward.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And Councillor Cole-Hamilton, I know you're sort of intimately involved with PACE, so I want to acknowledge that. And I think, we've even seen in the Valley here at the regional district partnering with local solar companies, where we've been able to provide a reduced cost to homeowners without any cost to the taxpayer, so to speak, just because of that volume buying. And so I see a lot of opportunities. There's economic spinoffs, but also that ability to bring that price point down as you have more and more people take advantage of these kind of retrofits. So fantastic. I don't see any questions or comments. So anybody opposed to receipt? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. Man, we're cruising right along. Next, we have the Regional District Economic Development Service Conversion Bylaw.
Mayor, I'll move that the correspondence dated April 28th, 2021 from the Comox Valley Regional District regarding bylaw number 654, Comox Valley Economic Development Service Conversion Bylaw number 345, 2016, Amendment 1 be received for information, and that the City of Courtenay consent to the adoption of the Comox Valley Regional District Bylaw number 654, being Comox Valley Economic Development Service Conversion Bylaw number 345, 2016, Amendment 1 under Section 346 of the Local Government Act.
Second that.
Excellent. And I can pass this over to staff. Did you want to speak to this, Mr. CAO, Jeff Garbutt?
I think the matter stands on its on the letter as per. We continue to be involved in the discussions regarding CVEDs and service review.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll maybe just make a comment in case there's anybody watching who doesn't have the letter in front of them. The issue here is with the dissolution of the Economic Development Services contract, the future of the visitor center. And while that is still the subject of discussion, the regional district is proposing this bylaw simply to be in a position to acquire funding to take over that center, if in fact that's the decision that is made by the parties involved. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. I do appreciate that. Any further questions and comments? I don't see any. On this one here, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Excellent. Councillor Frisch.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Moran.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
Support.
All right, and I'm in favor as well. That's unanimous. And next we go on to the letter from Courtenay Hoteliers. And this is somewhat following in the steps of the previous conversation.
Move receipt.
Move receipt. Second.
Appreciate that. This is just a letter that came in, and we'll be using this really to have those conversations with the Destination Market Advisory Committee, the DMAC, in regards to MRDT funds, and make sure that, again, as we talk about that dissolution of the CVED's contract with the CVRD, this is one of the threads that we need to follow and make sure that we're on top of. And I don't think you're necessarily prepared, but did you have anything you wanted to talk about on this, Mr. CAO?
Staff would interpret through the discussion at council that we would meet with the hoteliers through this discussion around the MRDT. Ms. Nelson has been taking the lead and working with me on this project. So I'm very helpful. I'm very thankful for her assistance. And we've been working closely with our counterparts at the CVRD, as well as having some discussions with CVED staff as well, and Tourism Vancouver Island. It's quite a robust conversation. However, the hoteliers who pay this tax haven't been directly engaged at this point. So we certainly will.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. And again, I'm here to support as well in any way. And I've been talking with the hoteliers, and that might be one of the reasons why we have this letter in front of us now, just to help move things along. So really appreciate that. It is just a letter, so for receipt. So is anybody opposed to receipt? Seeing none. All right, that's unanimously received. And next we have the briefing note for Lush.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that the Lush Valley resolution from the previous meeting be brought back to the floor.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Hillian and Councillor McCollum.
And just speaking to that, Mr. Mayor, the briefing note essentially provides information that was requested as part of this, and I'd just like to acknowledge staff and say thanks for that. I think it's helpful and gives us further information on which to base the decision tonight.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Helene. And Mr. CAO, Jeff Garbett, did you want to speak to this before I pass it over to Council?
No, but Ms. Saunders is available for discussion if we need it. And we would look likely for direction on the request.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. And I do see we have some councillors ready to go. So Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Well, I find the food box program to be exceptionally valuable to our residents, and I think it's something that in general our council supports. I think access to food is probably one of the most important pieces when we talk about a healthy community. So I'd like to support the motion as it is on the floor, but I wanted to give a chance to our staff just to maybe balance out the conversation. I know it was mentioned that we're taking 60,000 from a sort of a surplus of 200,000. That was earmarked for startup and shortfalls in our current year, I believe it is. It might be next year, but they can confirm that maybe, and get their sense of where we would be at with the $140,000 remaining.
Ms. Nelson, or I'm not sure if that would be Ms. Saunders or Ms. Nelson.
I can respond to that. So through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So the $200,000 is what's been set aside and still sitting in our reserve related to the COVID-19 restart funds. So it was identified in 2021, set aside for any additional losses that may occur or to support vulnerable. We sort of highlighted it as it could be towards vulnerable or further additional losses. So it wasn't specific. It was just a line item identified within the 2021 financial planning process. So the funds are still sitting in the reserve and they have not been allocated. So if 60,000 were to come from there, there would still be $140,000 left unallocated.
And is there any contemplation or foreseen expenses at this point for that other 140,000? Or is it, obviously it's always good to have something in your back pocket, but any thoughts on what we might be short on or need in this next term here?
Well, I will say that when the budget was developed, it was developed with the health order of the day in effect. We still had no confirmation of how long closures would be and how, with gaming revenues as well as our recreation. So those have actually lasted a bit longer than we anticipated, and closures have been more strict. So until we get a good 3 to 4 months worth of those revenues on the recreation side and we can do a full analysis, we won't be able to see exactly where the reductions are, and then we'll have to forecast out to the end of the year. But I would say that it's based on where things have been going, we're likely going to see less revenues coming in than we did anticipate. So there could be further additional losses that we have to report back to council on and take another look at our finances as the year progresses.
Okay, thanks very much for that. That does clarify it, and I'll just finish by saying that even with that information, I think it would be worthwhile to help at-risk people, especially those that are having a hard time getting enough food for their families. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And the motion on the floor right now is really just to bring back the item. So maybe I'll just dispense of that so that we can move into the main motion, which is probably where most of the discussion is gonna lie. So anybody opposed to the motion on the floor to bring back this motion, basically? Excellent. With that, if somebody would like to move the motion, and actually I believe Councillor Morin, if you'd like to move the.
Great, thank you, Mayor. So this is just the motion that came forward before, that in response to the January 18th, 2021 Lush Valley Food Action Society's delegation and request for funding to support local food purchasing for vulnerable populations and continue their Good Food Box program into 2021 during COVID-19, that Council approved $60,000 in funding out of the $200,000 that was identified as available in 2021 for other unexpected costs and revenue losses from the provincial COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant funds.
Second.
And I just quickly, I spoke to it before, but I just wanted to, something's come to light over the last little while that there was some confusion about the Lush Valley Food Action Society and the Food Policy Council, which I sit on. And I just wanted to put it on public record that I've never been on the board of Lush Valley Food Action Society, and I'm not currently on the board, but there are folks from all over the valley from local governments on the Food Council. And so it can be a bit confusing because Lush has members on the Food Policy Council as well. So I just wanted to clarify that the roles are separate, and the Food Policy Council does focus on initiatives and policy, and is not the same as Lush. So I just wanted to be transparent about that when I brought this motion forward, and also further clarification that this money wouldn't come out of, the local taxpayer, would come out of those Safe Restart funds, which I know does come from the taxpayer, but not, it doesn't affect our local tax rate. So I just wanted to make that clarification as well. Again, there was some confusion, I think, on the Lush website because the Food Policy Council is featured on their website. But just to be clear, I've never been on the board for Lush. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor Morin, and thanks so much for your work on this file. And really, when those questions did arise, you addressed them immediately. So I really do appreciate that. And I don't think anybody on council had any question in your abilities and being trustworthy. So I really appreciate that. With that, Councillor Theos. Any luck, Councillor Theos? I hit it once on you already today.
I have it. Sometimes my mute, doesn't click off. So thank you very kindly. Yeah, no, I appreciate Councillor Morin, bringing this issue forward, and I do support it. Basically, there's a lot of people that are in need right now, and they need to help. I just wanted to highlight a circumstance that years ago was coming in front of council on a regular basis. Was groups and organizations were lobbying council members on a regular basis to bring forward requests for funding. And, it's very difficult to say yes to one group and to the many other groups to say no to. And we were finding this problem years ago happening on a regular basis. And the other problem was that we were sitting on different different organizations on the boards, as Councillor Morin was saying, and it was bringing a real question about transparency to us at that time. And maybe this was going back maybe 15 years ago or so. And we, the council of the day, had made it very clear that that this was not the road that we should be going, is opening ourselves up to be lobbied on a regular basis, and sometimes individually, and then having to say no to many others, and and saying, well, maybe there's favoritism for one group over another. And this was a real significant problem that we had to say no to at the time afterwards. And obviously we found different ways with gaming and other ways to make it a more fair process. But there is pitfalls with going in this direction. So I just wanted to highlight that, even though I do definitely support helping out this organization.
Thanks much, Councillor Theos, and it is a challenge for sure. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate again staff looking into this and clarifying the funding that's already been received and the needs of the organization. I also appreciate the fact that Lush has provided, through their executive director, has provided a lot of information to council and staff. I wanted to note in following up Councillor Theos's point that this obviously is not without its challenges. One of those challenges, I was approached by a citizen in the last couple of weeks who was a former volunteer director of the Comox Valley Food Bank, and pointed out that the food bank operates with no government funding as a matter of policy and relies entirely on the donations of individuals and businesses in the community. And this individual's concern was that if council starts to fund organizations such as Lush in this manner, would that influence other people to think, well, we don't need to donate, government will take care of it. So while I recognize that for some that may be an issue, I think it's important to note that the Lush Valley organization has quite a different mandate and purpose and organizational structure to the food bank, and I would say is involved in a lot more programming in the community of a variety of nature, as opposed to just the simple taking in of food and distributing that out. So I'm satisfied that what we're funding here is a significant amount of community outreach and the education and nurturing that goes along with that. I'm also satisfied that this is a one-time grant because it is coming from funds that have been specifically allocated in relation to the pandemic. And on that basis, I believe that it's within our scope to respond, and so I will support this resolution. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, and again, thanks to staff for bringing this back to us so that we can fully contemplate it. And I think that was one of the things that council wanted to make sure, almost a sober second thought, to make sure that we had all the information to make the right decision. So thanks to staff for getting us that information. With that, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
And Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
I see your hand up as well. Did I miss you?
I had my question answered while I was waiting, so I'm good.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt the this in the middle. Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. All right. That's unanimous. I'm just going to lower the hand here and then back to the next thing. So reports and updates from council, and I believe Councillor Cole-Hamilton, you had something you wanted to update council on.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And last week I had the opportunity to be acting mayor for a really worthwhile circumstance. It's the Mterra, who is, of course picks up waste in our community and recycling, makes a donation each year to the Comox Valley Healthcare Foundation based upon the tonnage they pick up in the cities of Courtenay and Comox. And they invited Mayor Wells, who wasn't able to attend, so I was there in his stead, and Mayor Arnott. And also we had Dave Ross from Mterra and Bill Anglin, who's the president of the Comox Valley Healthcare Foundation. And due to the strong recycling efforts of our community, they were able to donate over $3,400 towards the Healthcare Foundation. And one of the discoveries that I made is that novelty checks are almost a quick way of ensuring you have social distancing. And so I'm not going to carry one around with me permanently, but it's a very useful way to keep a distance from Mayor Arnott. Anyway, it was I think a wonderful way of linking two great things. You know, people committing to recycling and thereby being able to help out with healthcare in their community. So it was a pleasure to serve there in your stead.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, and especially it was very short notice, so I do appreciate that. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to first of all acknowledge that it's currently Small Business Awards Week, and the Small Business Association of BC is handing out their awards. And it's noteworthy that I picked up the wrong set of notes. It's noteworthy that we have 3 local businesses that are up for awards this week. We have Core Landscape Products and Spirits of the West Art Gallery that are both in contention for the Best Innovation Awards. And then we have Bigfoot Donuts, which has been nominated for 3 awards. The Best Community Impact Award, the Youth Entrepreneur Award, and the Premier's People's Choice Award. And this is, I think, a wonderful recognition of the creative and innovative businesses that we have here in the Valley. And speaking of Bigfoot Donuts, I also want to acknowledge the passing of a longtime Courtenay resident, Mr. Wayne Bradley, who died a month ago today on April the 3rd. Wayne was a longtime community activist, well known to many, who founded the World Community Development Education Society, who founded the film festival that runs every year, who brought the first fair trade coffee to the community that continues to be sold in local supermarkets, and who worked on many progressive and community-minded projects over the years. He was gone all too soon. But coincidentally, Wayne's activism needed nourishment, and he was a frequent customer of Bigfoot Donuts. And in appreciation of his special relationship with that business, in the very week that they're nominated for innovative products and for being young entrepreneurs and the Premier's People's Choice Award, they're doing a special fundraiser in memory of Wayne, serving up his favorite, I believe, maple donuts. And everybody who buys one of those, 10% of that is going to, wouldn't you know it, Lush Valley. So that was something chosen by Wayne's partner, Janet, as a local organization worthy of that type of community-minded support. So I think in a way, we see all those things coming together. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge Wayne for all the incredibly hard and innovative work that he did over many years, a former school trustee, somebody who was a thorn in the side of the establishment for many years, but many of the things that he advocated for, we now take for granted as the examples of best practice, whether they relate to the environment or the social justice concerns that are so dear to many of us. So thank you for that opportunity. And Wayne, we're thinking of you today.
Thanks so much, Councillor Hilly. And I do feel fortunate to have been able to meet with him and work on various projects with him over the years. And he was a great mentor. And like you said, just a great man that he knew what needed to be done and was able to convince people to do it. So just a great man. Councillor Morin, I think I saw your hand up. You're good. Any other councillors that had anything that they wanted to talk about it? I'll maybe talk about a few of the things that I did over the last couple of weeks. So back on April 22nd, I did meet with KFN with staff as part of our OCP engagement, and I think, you know, again, just a great meeting where, you know, we're really getting into what we can do to make sure that we're not just asking for that input for OCP, but also how do we work together going forward, and just a great meeting around reconciliation and how do we put that into action. April 27th, we had a minister's call with Minister Farnsworth and Mr. Osborne, and a great conversation. And one of the things that has been kind of going around lately, and our Chief Don Barnenix actually had brought up the fact that volunteer firefighters were not being prioritized as first responder for vaccines. And so that's the thing that I kind of focused on that meeting. And within a couple of days, we got a response back from the province, and the chief was sent an email to start getting those volunteer firefighters registered to get their vaccines. So I just want to thank, well, first of all, the volunteer firefighters who put themselves in harm's way but also Chief for seeing something that should have been rectified and passing that information along so that, again, as a team, we can make sure those things happen. April 28th was the day of mourning, and I do just want to recognize that it is a day to pause and remember those that have been injured or killed due to workplace injuries. And it is an event that I generally have been involved in every year, and this year, unfortunately, my schedule didn't allow for it. But I just want to thank staff for really going forward and putting out videos and making the best event that they could to really raise awareness, especially for young people who are disproportionately injured. People under 30 years old basically are injured far more than those are that are older. And then on the 29th was the Comox Valley Chamber AGM, and I was asked to officiate and actually swear in the new director, so that was great. And MP Gord Johns was our keynote speaker. And for those of you who know Gord, it was a fantastic speech. And really, again, just kudos to our Chamber of Commerce, who a year ago, when the world got turned upside down, they immediately started having weekly meetings, not just for their chamber members, but for anybody who wanted to participate and learn more about business and how the government was going to support them. Whether it was mayors that were talking or MPs or MLAs, they were able to bring together accountants and everybody else to really help people move through this pandemic when everyone was literally standing on quicksand, not knowing what the next thing was to do, and they've just kept moving along, and so just great kudos for them. And maybe a reminder, I know Councillor Hilling talked about the donuts, but there is a dine around town for takeout and eating responsibly. So I just want to, that's another thing that the chamber was told me I should mention. And I think the last one was this morning. There was a chamber, another chamber event with Minister Hyman going over the budget and kind of how that's going to impact businesses and the Comox Valley. So with that, I will cede the floor. Councillor Moore, and I do see your mic's off. So did you want to add something, or just in case your cat comes up behind your doorbells start to ring? All right, that's all I had. Thanks for listening to that part, and we'll move into resolutions of council, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I'm going to say that despite the wonderful help ahead from Ryan and from Kate O'Connell, this is still a fairly long resolution, so everyone just sit down comfortably. Be it resolved that staff be directed to submit the following resolution for consideration at the 2021 UBCM Convention: immediate protection for all at-risk old-growth forest in BC. Whereas ancient high productivity big tree old growth ecosystems are globally one of the most valuable climate mitigation and resiliency assets in terms of carbon storage, sequestration, protection against wildfire, storage of water, and bank of biodiversity. And whereas the Premier of British Columbia has stated that the government of BC would implement the Old Growth Strategic Review report, quote, in its totality, and the Union of BC Indian Chiefs passed a resolution calling, quote, calling for the provincial government to take immediate and sustained action to ensure the report's recommendations are carried out with First Nations included and consulted every step of the way. Therefore, be it resolved that the Union of BC Municipalities call on the provincial government to immediately defer logging in all high productivity, rare, oldest, and most intact old growth forests as recommended by the Old Growth Strategic Review until all of the panel's 14 recommendations have been implemented, including deferrals in such at-risk old growth forests as headwaters of Fairy Creek, the Upper Walbrand Valley, the Namint Valley, Eden Grove, Edinburgh Mountain, Upper Sitka Valley, East Creek, Claskish Valley, Nimkish Lake, and the inland old growth temperate rainforest. And that the Union of BC Municipalities call upon the government of BC to allocate funding to enact these deferrals in an economically just manner, in the full spirit of reconciliation, and to support the economic transitions of affected First Nations and non-First Nations communities, from unsustainable old growth logging to the development of long-term sustainable local economies, and that a copy of the aforementioned resolution be sent to the province of BC. Attention, John Horgan, for information. And Mayor, may I say a few more words about it at this point?
If you have a few more, sure.
Sorry.
Did someone second it?
Oh yeah, we should let it second. There we go. Councillor Frisch, thanks for that.
I want to step on my seconder. Thanks very much, Councillor Frisch. So last month, the Comox Youth Climate Council wrote to elected officials throughout the Comox Valley with a detailed letter asking for us to support this resolution to UBCM regarding old growth logging. They reiterated that call at an Earth Day meeting that many on this council attended. I want to thank them for the time and the energy they put into this outreach. Their request centers around the old growth strategic report, which was completed and received by the government in April of 2020, and then released publicly in September of last year. It contained 14 recommendations, including a call for the immediate deferral of logging old growth trees. And as was stated in the resolution, the BC government and First Nations leadership are on record as supporting the recommendations, which include a call for immediate deferrals of logging. The Premier committed to implementing the report in its totality, and the Union of BC Indian Chief passed a resolution in September calling for the 14 recommendations to be immediately implemented, with First Nations included, and consulted every step of the way. However, more than a year after the report was submitted to the BC government, 8 months after the Union of BC Indian Chiefs called for immediate implementation, no deferrals have occurred. And the recent BC budget showed no allocation of the funds that would be needed to allow for deferrals to occur in a just fashion. In fact, the Ministry of Forest's budget was decreased by 4%. While I understand that land tenure is complex and that First Nations must be consulted at every step, the lack of funding required to carry out such deferrals in a just way is of concern. Chief Phillips, the Grand Chief of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, responded to the lack of funding in the budget by saying that the Union of BC Indian Chiefs would like to see funding put towards stronger, comprehensive old growth policy, including the full implementation of the recommendations from the Strategic Old Growth Report, and more engagement and consultation with First Nations on how they can impose a moratorium on old growth logging that directly impacts their territories. Furthermore, a report prepared by 3 independent professional foresters, all of whom have worked for the Ministry of Forests in the past, was submitted to the Old Growth Strategic Review. Their report estimates that the total area of big tree old growth in the province is now roughly 350 square kilometers in total. And to put that into perspective, the entire province of British Columbia is just over 944,000 square kilometers. So 350 square kilometers, what remains is 3/100ths of 1% of the province. And of that 350 square kilometers, 75% of those trees are set to be logged. With numbers like this, there's not a lot of time left. And so with big tree old growth, so little big tree old growth remaining, the logging of old growth will soon come to an end one way or another. I want to conclude by quoting from a letter that the Comox Valley Regional District sent to the Old Growth Strategic Review. And I quote, "The value of old growth forests cannot be overstated. All first growth areas should be protected in perpetuity." Last month, the board of the CVRD voted unanimously to write to the Premier calling for the action set out in this resolution. And the Village of Cumberland voted unanimously to call upon the province to do the same. I hope the City of Courtenay will consider doing the same. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. And I do see that we have a couple of folks here, so we'll pass it over to Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Councillor Cole-Hamilton for bringing this resolution forward. The topic of old growth logging and preservation in BC has been on everyone's minds since as long as I can remember. I grew up seeing pictures of Clayoquot protesters on the news when I was in elementary school, and then later Walbrand. And with each change of government, I think anyone that pays attention to this topic has been hopeful that the province will finally take action and that we'll see what's left protected. But that small piece of what's left, it gets diminished every year. And I just wonder at what point we've lost enough that our provincial government will recognize that it's a priceless resource that we owe it to future generations to save. And from the comments that I've heard from our premier in the last month, it seems as though there's a lot of defensiveness around the lack of action that's been taken by the province. And I think it is important for local government to speak up and recognize that the response that we've seen around protection of old growth forests is not adequate, and that we're watching, and that there is certainly more that can be done. And I'm 100% support of sending the letter, and hopefully it causes our provincial government to take pause. So thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCullum. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, for taking on this super important issue. I don't think that there's, it's so emotional, I think, for all of us to see a tree that's 500 years, 1,000 years old, get cut down for a few dollars, and to realize that we'll never see that again. That these trees are not coming back. Not in my lifetime, not in my kids' lifetime, not in my grandchildren's lifetime. I mean, this is forever, and I think we really do have to act on this. So really impressed with your work on this, and of course happy to support. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just add that I'm guessing many people who live in the Comox Valley, their only experience of old growth might be driving through Cathedral Grove on the way to the West Coast. But you need to go no further than to take a walk in Elk Falls Provincial Park, just on the outskirts of Campbell River. And you'll get the opportunity to walk through some wonderful old growth. And as has been noted, trees that are 700-800 years old that we won't see again in our lifetime. There is a sign up in the park by the BC Parks Department that indicates that old growth represents 4% of what was once on Vancouver Island. That may be a slightly different figure than quoted by Councillor Cole-Hamilton, but if we even think about it in those terms, if they're accurate, we just see the scale on which we've lost these trees. And I think that, as we all know, the process of government, the devil is always in the details, and we don't know what all the complications are behind the scenes with relation to the First Nations involved and the forest tenure involved that may be delaying this implementation. But I believe that it's a useful gesture to add our voice to the other councils, and particularly the young people who are expressing this concern. And I'm totally in favor of supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. I appreciate that. And again, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, thanks for bringing this forward to council. I know sometimes we councils will get asked why we're doing things that aren't, roads and sewer and water, but sometimes there are things that are more important. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. With that, I'm going to poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. That's unanimous. Excellent. Thanks very much. It was a fulsome conversation and one that was worthwhile. So thanks again, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, for bringing that forward. My tongue's getting a little tripped up here. Next, we have an in-camera meeting.
I can move this one. I'll move that a special in-camera meeting closed to the public will be held today, May 3rd, at the conclusion of the regular council meeting pursuant to the following subsections of the Community Charter: 91C, Labor Relations and Other Employee Relations; 91K, Negotiations and Related Discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. And 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to the negotiations between the municipality and a provincial government or federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party.
Second that.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. It is just to go on camera. Anybody opposed? Seeing nobody opposed, that passes unanimously. And then we get into bylaws. So we have first and second reading for bylaw 3027, 2021.
Mayor, I'll move that zoning amendment bylaw number 3027, 2021 for 1814 Grieve Avenue, which is to amend zoning bylaw number 2500, 2007 to rezone the property from residential 1 to residential 1S to permit the addition of a secondary suite. Pass first and second reading.
Second.
Second.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Cole-Hamilton. Any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
Favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well, so that's unanimous. And for second reading.
I can read this one. I'm just making sure I'm on the right one here. I'll move that OCP amendment bylaw number 3018-2020, Lot A 2650 Copperfield Road, a bylaw to amend the official community plan bylaw number 2387-2005 to change the land use designation from suburban residential to urban residential, and that map number 2 land use plan be amended accordingly. Pass second reading.
Second.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Morin. And we'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton
In favor?
and Councillor Frisch
In favor.
and Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
And Councillor Hillian, I see your hand is up. My apologies. Did I miss a question?
No problem, Mayor. I accidentally hit the raise hand button.
Excellent. Oh, well, at least I noticed. Councillor, who is
I'm in
next?
favor.
Councillor McCollum.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. That's unanimous. And another zoning amendment that's very similar.
I can move this, Mayor. I'll move that zoning amendment bylaw number 2912, 2020, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 2500, 2007 to amend Division 8 classification zones through the addition of a comprehensive development 30 zones, CD 30, and to rezone the property from residential 1, R1A, to comprehensive development zones 30, CD 30, and public assembly 2, PA 2, receive second reading.
Second.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton and Councillor McCollum. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton
In favor?
and Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian
In favor.
and Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin
In favor.
and Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. That's unanimous. And for final adoption.
Mayor, I'll move that bylaw 2021 tax rates number 3033, 2021, a bylaw to establish the property value taxation rates for 2021 be finally adopted.
Excellent. Did you catch the seconder?
Yeah, that was me.
Perfect. Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding the tax rates bylaw? Seeing none, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton
In favor?
and Councillor Frisch,
In favor.
Councillor Hillian,
In favor.
Councillor McCollum,
In favor.
Councillor Morin,
In favor.
and Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
All right, and I'm in favor as well, so that's unanimous. Only one thing left.
Move adjournment.
Excellent. Anybody opposed to adjournment? Excellent. We are adjourned.